Tactical and practical. Be a top 10% marketer. And that's obvious. This episode is brought to you by Intelligems. They're our one-stop shop for all things profit growth at Original Grain. We've been a paying customer for the last couple of years, and what Intelligems has allowed us to do is execute the CRO strategy that I always dreamed of. Execute the CRO strategy that I always knew we needed, but I didn't think we had the resources or the developers or the budget to be able to execute it the way I really wanted it to. But you don't need any of those things with Intelligems. You just need a Shopify account and an Intelligems account, and you can start adding dollars to your bottom line today. So go to Intelligems.io, use code TACTICAL and PRACTICAL. Just kidding. I don't think they have codes for you to sign up for a demo, but let them know I sent you, and you can start making more money today. All right. Let me first apologize for my clickbait headline. This podcast is not about becoming a top 10% marketer. Because if you listen to Tactical and Practical, you're already a top 10% marketer. So pat yourself on the back. But what this episode is about is marketing to the top 10% of earners in America. If you look at this chart that we'll put right here on the screen, the top 10% of earners in America now account for half of all spending. Let me say that again. The top 10% of earners in America now account for half of all spending. So all I'm suggesting you do is create products and create content that appeal to that top 10%. Build products and create content for the people who are most likely to buy from you over the next 12 to 24 months. And to be honest, over the next 12 to 24 months, I don't see this trend reversing. It might plateau. It might get even worse. But it's clear that the top percentage of American earners are the only ones with money to spend right now. So as D2C, Shopify, native brands who typically aren't competing purely on price, most of you aren't the most commoditized version of whatever it is you sell. If you were, you probably wouldn't be selling on Shopify. You'd probably be selling on Amazon or in Walmart. But since you're not, since you're selling on Shopify, since you're an ecom brand, and you're not competing purely on price, you're not just going after the bottom of the market, why wouldn't you try to go to the top? Why wouldn't you switch your focus from trying to acquire the cheapest customers to acquiring the most valuable customers? I want to be clear about what I'm saying here, and I want to be clear about what I'm not saying here. I'm not saying you need to increase your prices site-wide. I'm not saying you should price yourself out of 90% of Americans' wallets. I'm not suggesting that you forget the customers or stop serving the customers that you currently have. But I'm talking about making a new addition to your brand. I'm talking about going into product development meetings, going into creative strategy meetings with the stated goal of creating products and content that appeal to the top 10% of earners in America. Let me give you a few examples of what I'm talking about, because I think there's some brands out there that you've heard of that are already doing this incredibly well, and I want to put this into tactical and practical terms for you. Dad Gang. Dad Gang makes hats for dads. They weren't the first brand to make hats for dads. They're not going to be the last, but they're one of the highest quality. I guess a little announcement. I just got my first Dad Gang hat, and I'm a big hat guy, as you can tell. And it is without a doubt the highest quality snapback I own. Like by a wide margin. I'll admit it doesn't compare to my Stetsons. But of every other snapback I own, from good reputable brands, from New Era, from 47 brand, the Dad Gang hat is built the best, feels the best, most comfortable. I think it has the best shape to it. It's an incredibly high quality product. But Bart and the guys over at Dad Gang have not priced themselves out of 90% of Americans. Their hat costs $35. That might be a little expensive for a hat, but it's not the most expensive for a ball cap. And I think their content does such a good job elevating and celebrating great fathers that that's appealing to this top percent of American earners. A lot of people who are just focused on trying to get by aren't focused on celebrating fatherhood. But their guys have the luxury of the time to celebrate that time with their families. And that is how they're doing a great job appealing to the top percentage of earners with both their product and their content. Jack Daniels, I think another brand doing this excellently. Yep, excellently. I just checked again. Because Old Number 7 is affordable and accessible whiskey. I don't know anyone who's ever not gotten a shot of Jack or ever not gotten a Jack and Coke because it was too expensive. But what I'm drinking right now isn't Old Number 7. This is Jack Daniel's Sinatra Select, which I bought a bottle for $270, and it's very, very good whiskey. I have another bottle in my house of their 2022 special release, who's an American single malt, that I bought on the secondary market for $600. And if I can find a bottle of Jack Daniel's 14, don't tell my wife this, but I might spend $900 on a bottle of Jack Daniel's. So they haven't forgotten the vast majority of their market that drinks Old Number 7. But they are now creating products and creating messaging and creating purpose around their new product lines that appeal to the, bougiest and snobbiest of whiskey drinkers. I think Lucchese, cowboy boot brand, does this really well. They have cowboy boots for $400, which are not cheap. There are much, much cheaper options. But $400 for a pair of boots that you'll wear for a decade or two isn't that crazy. I've got a couple pairs of $400 boots lying around. But they also sell a pair of boots that cost $17,000. That's more than most of the Rolexes you see at ecom conferences. They're selling boots for that. At Original Grain, for us, this happened in the last 15 months, 16 months. Our most popular watch from a couple of years ago cost $200. Our most popular watch for all of last year and for this year cost $350. Now, that's not a jump to 17 grand like Lucchese has, but that's almost doubling the cost of our most popular and our most purchased watch. And I'm not just saying that watch brings in more revenue now. We sell more units of it than the $200 watch that was our best seller for the previous 6 years. So I'm not advocating for you guys abandoning 90% of the American market. I'm advocating for you to be intentional about going after the top 10%. I highly, highly, highly recommend to put a call on the calendar for you and your C-suite. Maybe you do it once a month for the rest of this year. I want you to title that meeting Top 10% and spend the rest of this year figuring out how to build a better version of your products. Then figure out how to create higher quality content that more accurately communicates your new increased value. This is not some elitist rant I'm going on. I want you to win in ecom over the next couple of years, and I don't see a path to winning if you're not building products and creating content for the only people with disposable income right now. So, unless you're selling eggs, no, I was about to say, unless you're selling eggs, compete on price, but that's not true. I just paid $17 for a dozen eggs from a local farm. There's a market for more expensive eggs, no matter how much people are complaining about it. I think that's probably the punchline to this pod. If you think you're excluded from this, you're not. There's a market for a more expensive, higher quality, more sustainable, longer lasting, more fashionable, whatever it is. There's room for a version in the market of a better thing than what you currently make. Go make dope shit, then go make great content that communicates the value of it, geared towards the top 10% of American earners, and thank me at the end of 2026 when you can clearly see that this paid off for you. As much as we have celebrated having our most popular watch change from one that cost $200 to now one that costs $350, I'm going into product development meetings this week to create a $1,000 watch and to create more $700 and $800 watches, because we're not done moving up market, and I don't think you should be either. Thanks for listening to Tactical and Practical. My name's Nate Lagos. You can follow me at Nate Lagos on Twitter. Shout out to Intelligent for the sponsor. See you next time.